Welcome to this session of our class. Today we are going to learn on quadratic equation. And quadratic equation is very important in mathematics. And most of the time when you are solving a question, you may come across a quadratic equation. And when you are solving a question, you come across quadratic equation normally gives values or gives two values, okay, of the equation, or we have two values that will satisfy the equation. All right, so quadratic equation first of all is in this form: as squared plus bs plus c equal to 0, right? Where a is the coefficient of the s square, b is the coefficient of the, and the c is the constant without any variable attached. Okay, so example, we can have, let's say, 3s squared minus 2s plus 7 equal to 0. So this is example of a quadratic equation, and this is a quadratic trinomial, meaning that the quadratic here we have three terms, okay? And when we talk about the equation, we have equal sign where we will solve to get two values that will satisfy the equation. And it is quadratic because of the degree or the exponent of the two. So this is example of a quadratic equation where the coefficient of the s square is 3, the coefficient of the x is -2, and the constant without any variable attached is what? Is 7. All right. We cannot even have example like this: s squared minus 6 equal to 0. This is also a quadratic equation, but this quadratic equation is a quadratic binomial, but the terms are 2, s squared and then the -6. All right. Or even with a quadratic binomial, we can have example like 6s squared plus 36 equal to 0. All right. This is also a quadratic binomial. All right. Or it can be 8s squared minus 64x equal to 0. There is also a quadratic binomial. Okay, so in this case, when you look at the binomial we have here, it means that the x, okay, the coefficient of the x is 0 here to the coefficient of the s is 0, and then here to the constant without any variable is also what? Is also 0. All right, so these are some of the examples of quadratic that we can also have. Okay, right. So what we are going to do here today is to look at the way that we can solve a quadratic equation. What way can a quadratic equation be solved? That is to get the two values that will satisfy the equation. Okay, two values that will satisfy the equation, or the roots of what? Of the equation. So we are going to look at the ways that quadratic equation can be solved. Okay. Ways of solving quadratic equation. Okay, ways of solving. One, we can have the factorization method. Number two, we can also have the completing of square. Completing the square. Number three, we can also use the formula method. And then number four, we can also go by the graphical method. Okay, so we can, that is what we are going to look for. Okay, these are the four ways that I'm going to go through, okay, and teach us how we can solve quadratic equations by these four ways. All right, the factorization method, the completing the square, the formula method, and then the graphical method. So one, we are going to look at the factorization method. The factorization method, we look at the quadratic trinomial and then the quadratic binomial, and then we look at how we factor out the highest common factor so that we can solve. So let's look at factorization method. Let's look at this example. So first we are going to look at example on quadratic trinomial, then we come to quadratic binomial, and then we in that order. Okay, so solve s square minus x minus 30 equal to 0. Solve s square minus x minus 30 equal to 0. So I'm not going to take much time on this because this has already been taught in our lesson. So when you go to the playlist, you can see factorization, check factorization of quadratic trinomial, and then you are good to go. So this is a quadratic trinomial, 1, 2, 3. So how do we solve a quadratic trinomial? You say take the coefficient of the s square, multiply by the constant. So the coefficient of the s square is 1 times the constant negative 30. So 1 by negative 30 is going to give me negative 30. Alright? Then you find two factors of negative 30. When you add, you are going to get negative 1. And the two factors I think will be 6 and then negative 6 and then 5. Alright, so negative 6 times 5 will give me negative 30. At the same time, negative 6 plus 5 is going to give me negative 1. So what I'm going to do is to split, okay, the coefficient of the x with negative 6 and then positive 5. So I'm going to have s squared minus 6s plus 5x minus 30 equal to 0. So that at the end of the day, you can see that negative 6s plus 5x will give me negative x. Then I'm going to do what? I'm going to factor out. So s squared and then minus 6, the highest common factor will be x. And I have x minus 6 plus, then I count 5s and then minus 30. The highest common factor will be 5. And then 5 goes into 30 will give what? 6. So that will also be x minus 6. So that when you expand this, you are going to get back this. S times x will give me s squared, s times minus 6 will give me minus 6s, 5 times x will give me 5s, 5 times negative 6 will give me minus what? 30. So the highest common factor here will also be x minus 6. And then we have x plus 5 left here equal to 0. Alright, then what do we do? We take x minus 6 to be equal to 0, where x will be equal to what? Positive 6, or s plus 5 to be equal to 0, which s will be equal to negative 5. Alright, so you have gotten the two values of x that will satisfy what? That will satisfy this particular equation here. Alright, where the two values are either s is equal to 6 or negative 5. So x is 6 or x is negative 5 will satisfy the equation s squared minus x minus 30 equal to 0. Alright, so this is when you have a quadratic trinomial and then you want to factorize. This is how it is being done. Okay, I know you get it. Let's go to another example. Solve, let's say 5s squared plus 25x equal to what? Equal to 0. This is a quadratic what? A quadratic binomial. Okay, so 5s squared plus 25s equal to 0. Okay, so let's look at this one, how we are going to solve it. So 5s squared plus 25x equal to 0. So what we do is what? To bring the highest common factor out, 5s squared and then 25x. 5 can go into 25, 5 can go into this, so 5 will come out. S can go into s squared, s can go into x, so x will come out. Then what is remaining here is x plus 5 can go into 25 5 times, and s can go into s 1 time, so x plus 5 equal to 0. So that when you expand this, you get back the same thing. 5s times x will give me what? 5s squared. 5s times 5 is going to give me what? 25x equal to 0. So what we are going to, either this is equal to 0 or s minus 5 is equal to s plus 5 is equal to what? 0. So either 5s is equal to 0, which means that x will be equal to what? 0 divided by 5, and that will give me what? 0. Or x plus 5 also going to give us 0, which means that x is going to give us what? Negative 5. Alright, so our values of s is either s is equal to negative 5 or 0. That means negative 5 and 0 when substituted in the equation, will satisfy the equation. The binomial can also be like this. Solve x squared minus 9 equal to 0. X squared minus 9 equal to 0. Okay, where we have the coefficient of the s squared and then we have the constant here. Okay, so this is difference of what? 2 squares. What difference of 2 squares? If I have a squared minus b squared is the same as a plus b and then a minus b. And how did we know this is a difference of 2 squares? The reason being that 9 can be expressed as a perfect, 9 is a perfect number. Okay, and 3 squared is going to give me 9. Alright, and when you expand this, you get back the same thing here that we have. A times, so for instance, a times a will give me a squared, a times negative b will give me negative ab, b times a will give me ab positive, and b times negative b will give negative b squared. So you realize that we have a squared, negative ab plus ab will go away, minus what? B squared. So you see that we have gotten the same thing back here. Okay, that is the reason why this is equal to this. All right. Okay, so when you have difference of 2 squared, then the factorization become this plus this. All right, and then this minus this in both brackets, and the two, okay, the two terms have to be what? Have to be a perfect square or a perfect number, and there should be a subtraction in between the two terms. That is why that is when you can use what? The difference of 2 squares and factorize. Okay, so let's look at the example that we have here. So this can be written as, so x squared minus 9 equal to 0 can be written as what? X squared minus 3 squared. So you see that this has become difference of 2 squares. This is a perfect number. So what can we say? We can say x plus 3 and what? X minus 3 equal to 0. So that when we solve this, what are we going to get? We get x plus 3 to be 0, which means x equal to what? Negative 3, or x minus 3 is also 0, which means x equal to what? Positive 3. Alright, so the two values of s is either s is equal to 3 or minus 3. Either s is equal to 3 or negative 3. So these are the two values of what? The two values of x. I believe you get it. Alright. So this is, we call this difference of 2 squares. Okay. That at the end of the day, okay, when you substitute 3 here, 3 square will give me what? 3 square will give me 9. 9 minus 9 is 0. Negative 3 square will give me what? 9 minus 9 is also 0. So the answer can be negative 3 or positive 3. Welcome to another session of our class on quadratic equation. In our first lesson, we learned how we solve quadratic equation by the factorization method. In this particular session, we are going to look at completing the square method. So when you have a quadratic and you want to complete the square, so let's look at quadratic which are perfect. We have quadratic that are perfect. So example, x minus 2 all squared. This is a perfect square of a quadratic. When you expand, so it will be x minus 2 and then x minus 2. S times s will give you s squared. S times negative 2 give negative 2x. Negative 2 times x will give you negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative give you positive 4. So I have s squared minus 2x minus a give me negative 4x plus 4. So this quadratic trinomial here is a perfect square. Alright. So when we have a quadratic trinomial which is a perfect square, then it means that if the coefficient of the s square is 1, okay, and then you take the coefficient of the x, which is negative 4, and you multiply by half, and then after that you square the results, it will be equal to what? The constant here. For every quadratic, that is what happens. That anytime the coefficient of the s square is 1, and then you look at the coefficient of the x, and then you multiply by half and you square it, it will be equal to what? The constant here. So let's see. Negative 4 times half will give me negative 2. 2 will go here too. So when I square negative 2, what do I get? I get 4. Alright. So that is going to happen here. Okay. Let's look at another example too and see something. Okay. Let's say I have 2x plus 5 all squared. This is also a perfect square. Okay, this is also a perfect square. This is a perfect binomial. So when I also expand, look at what I'm going to get. So I'll have 2x plus 5 and then 2x plus 5. So with the completing the square, the reason why I'm doing all this is that with the completing the square, what will happen is that you make one side of the equation as well as a perfect square. So that when one side of the equation becomes a perfect square, you can use it to solve. That is what we are doing. We are completing the square. So it happens that when you are given the quadratic and then the square is not complete, what you do is what? To complete the square and then use it to solve. So we are looking at example of perfect quadratic that are perfect, and then we see their nature, and when we are given a question, we look at how will be. So that if it is not, when the quadratic you are given is not perfect, we look at how we are going to what? Perfect it, or what you are going to do to complete the square. Alright, to complete the square means to make it a perfect square. Like example like this. This is a perfect square of quadratic, this is a perfect square of quadratic. So that we can what? We can solve. So let's also look at this. So 2s times 2s will give me what? 4s squared. 2s times 5 will give me what? 10x, right? 5 times 2s will give me 10x. And then 5 times 5 will give me 25. So at the end of the day, I'm going to have 4s squared plus 10 plus 10 will give me 20x plus 25. Alright. So what will happen here is that to prove that this is a perfect square, it means that if the coefficient of the s square is 1, okay, if the coefficient of the s square is 1, then it means that I'm going to divide all through by what? All through by 4. Let's say here by 4, here by 4, and then here by 4. If that is going to happen, then what happens? I'll have s squared, 20 over 4 will give me 5x plus 25 on 4. So see something here. It means that since we know that this is a perfect square of quadratic, it means that when you take the coefficient of the x, because this is the coefficient of the s square is 1. When I take the coefficient of the x here, which is 5, and I multiply by half and I square it, it will be equal to what? The constant here. So 5 times 5 will give 5 over 2. Let's square 5 over 2. 5 square will give me 25. 2 square will give me 4. You see that is what is happening here. Alright. So that is what we are going to use to complete the square of a quadratic that we are going to be given. So that what we will do is that if the quadratic is not, the square is not complete, we are going to complete it. Okay. And what we do to complete it, to make sure one, the coefficient of the x square is 1. Then we take the coefficient of the x, then we multiply by half and square it. When we do that, the quadratic will become a perfect square. That is, we will complete the square. Alright, so let's look at how we are going to use this approach to solve some of the questions. Okay. And take note here that, let's say if I have a quadratic which is s squared minus 5x, okay, and I want to, this is quadratic binomial, okay, what I'm going to do is what? To make sure that this quadratic binomial, I'm going to complete it so that it will become a perfect, okay, a perfect square. Alright, so what do I do to complete this so that it become a perfect square? So what constant should be added to this quadratic binomial to make sure that this will become a perfect square? So we will take the coefficient of the x, which is negative 5. Then we said that was multiply by 1 over 2. So negative 5 over 2. Then we square it. When I square negative 4 over 2, what am I going to get? Negative 5 squared 25. 2 squared will give me what? Will give me 4. So I have negative 5 over 2 all squared. So This quadratic is s squared minus 5s plus 25 over 2. This is a perfect square of a quadratic. However, if I want to write this, all right, as a binomial and square it, how am I going to write it? It means that this is s squared minus 5s plus this, then negative 5 on 2 all squared. Okay, so that this quadratic that I have here, and in the long run, if I want to write it as a binomial and square it, it will become x, then we take what is here, so they take the square and the square, minus 5 on 2 all squared. And this is what will give me this particular answer here, this quadratic trinomial, s squared minus 5x plus 24 over x. If you like, let's try to expand. And in the short way to expand a quadratic binomial, binomial that is a square, is that first of all you square the x here, so you have x squared, then you multiply negative 5 over 2 by x, then you multiply by 2, so negative 5 over 2 will give me times x will give me negative 5 over 2x, then I multiply by 2, so 2 will cancel 2 here, so I have negative 5, so I have negative 5x. Then what I will do is to square the second term here, so negative 5 over 2 all squared will give me what? 25 on 4, so I have plus 25 on 4. So you see that I'm getting the same results here, that the expansion of this perfect square is giving me this. All right, so what happens is that whenever you have, when you complete a binomial, okay, when you complete the square, then this becomes, after you have taken the coefficient of the x and multiply by half and you square it, then whatever results you get, okay, when you square it, whatever you have here to become a perfect square is x times plus or minus the particular, depending on the value here. So here is minus 5 over 2, so it become x minus 5 over 2 all squared. And this particular expansion will give you the same results as this one. Is that okay? Yes. So that is what we do to complete a square. All right. If you understand this concept, it will be so easy with the completing of square method. Let me give one more example before we solve questions on this. Another example would be like s squared plus 16x. How do I make sure that this becomes a perfect square? Okay, s squared plus 16. How do I make sure this becomes a perfect square? So since this is the coefficient of this is 1, I'll take the coefficient of what? The x, which is 16, and I'll multiply by half. That is 8. So I'm going to get what? 8. Then I'm going to square 8 and add together, so this becomes a squared. Alright, like this. This becomes a squared. So what will be the results of this? This will be x plus 8 all squared. And you realize that, you see, because this is, when you want to complete the square, take the coefficient, make sure that the coefficient of this is 1. After it is 1, take the coefficient of the s, you multiply by half, the results you get, you square and add it to it. Then this will become a perfect square. So our answer becomes s plus 8 all squared. All right, and s plus 8 all squared, this in actual sense will be s squared plus 16x. 8 squared will give me 164. Okay, so s squared plus 16 plus 64 is a perfect square, which will give s plus 8 all squared. Let me try and expand. You see that I'll get the same result as this one. All right, so I've told you the short way to expand is take the coefficient of the, we know this is the same as s plus 8 and then s plus 8. Then after that you multiply and then you get your answer. Another short way can be take the x here and square it, you have s squared, then multiply the 8 by the x, which is 8x, then times 2, 16x. Then after that you square the 8, that will give us 64. So rather than s squared plus 16 plus 64 is the same as s plus 8 all squared. And that is what we have here. So to complete the square of this, square, multiply by half, the answer you get, then you square it and add it to it, and then that becomes 8 plus whatever you have here, all square. So you take the two that are what? That are the square, and then you write it like this, and this has become a perfect square. You have completed the square. Alright, so that is the approach you are going to. If you understand this from here, then it will be simple for us to continue, and that is the approach you are going to use to solve the other questions. Alright, so let's move on. Okay, so we are going to solve s squared minus s minus 30 equal to 0. I think this is when we were doing the factorization method, I think we solved this particular question, and we are going to solve using the completing of square method. All right, so first of all, we are fortunate here. We have s squared minus s minus 30 equal to 0. We are fortunate here, the coefficient of the x square is 1. So very good for us, we can move on. Then what we are going to do is what? We will take, because here, if the coefficient of the s square, the coefficient of the s square is 1. Okay, so fortunately for us, we have gotten it as 1. So what we are going to do is to take the coefficient of the x, we multiply by half, and then we add to both sides of the equation. So first of all, we will take the constant to this side. Okay, we will take the constant to this side, because already this is not a perfect square. Because when you take, what is the coefficient of the x? -1 times half. That will be -1/2. When you square it, what are you going to get? You are going to get 1 on 4. -1 squared is 1/4. And which is not the same as whatever we have here. So it is telling us that this is not what? A perfect square. So what we do is take the constant to the other side of the equation, so that when we take it there, we are going to have what? S squared minus x to be equal to 30. Okay, then we will take the coefficient of the x, which is -1, multiply by 1/2, you get -1/2. Then we square it. When we square, what we are going to do is to what? After you have squared, don't expand yet. Okay, we will add to both sides of the equation. When we add to both sides of the equation, mathematically it is correct. So we have s squared minus s, and then we have plus -1/2 all squared equal to 30 plus -1/2 also all squared. So when we add to both sides of the equation, we have not changed anything. It is the same thing. Alright, then we have completed the square. So what will become our answer here? We take the x minus 1/2 all squared, which is, so when you expand it, you get the same thing here, which is equal to 30 plus -1 squared is 1, 2 squared will give me 4. So 30 plus 1/4. So that we have x minus 1/2 all squared to be, what is 30 plus 1/4? Plus 1/4 will give us 121/4. Okay, 121/4. So what do we do next? What we are going to do is we are finding the value of s. Okay, so what we will do is what? To get rid of the square there. So we are going to square root the other side. We have x minus 1/2 to be equal to square root of plus or minus 121/4. The reason why we are using plus or minus here is because, for instance, when you have s squared to be equal to 9, okay, and I solve this, I will say s is equal to plus or minus 9, which will give me s is equal to plus 3. So it will be plus or minus, what is square root of 9? Square root of 9 is 3. That will be, so x will be plus 3 or minus 3, which is 3 or -3. Okay, and when you substitute this into the main equation, you realize that it will work, because 3 squared will give me 9. -3 squared will also give me what? Also give me 9. So because of the square here, anytime you square negative or positive, you realize that you get the same what? You get the same answer. That is why we are taking the negative and the positive side of what? Of the results in the roots. Okay, because the negative and the positive will get me the same answer. I believe that is understood. That is why you have the negative and positive there. But the negative and the positive square give the same answer. Alright. The negative 3 square is 9. 3 square is also 9. I hope it's understood. So we will have our x to be equal to 1 over 2. We take it plus or minus square root of 121 on 4. Okay, so our x will be equal to 1 over 2 plus or minus. So the square root of 121 will give me 11. And the square root of 4 is going to give me what? It's going to give me 2. So I have x is equal to 1 over 2 plus or minus 11 over 2. So my x will either be 1 over 2 plus 11 over 2 or 1 over 2 minus, you take the negative side, 11 over 2. So what will be x? What is 1 over 2 plus 11 over 2? So this one, our LCM will be 2. 1 plus 11 will give me what? Will give me 12. That will give me 12 over 2, give me 6. Or we have our x to be equal to this one 2. The LCM will be 2. 1 minus 11 will give me what? Minus 10. And that will give me negative 5. So my x, what will be my x? My x is going to be 6 or negative 5. So you see that I've been able to use the method of completing the square and solve this the same as we use the factorization to solve. So the value of x is either 6 or negative 5. You see, it is so simple and not anything that is difficult. Let's solve one more example of this. And I believe that when you get a question, you'll be able to solve. Alright. We are going to solve this. Solve 3x squared minus 15x plus 9 equal to 0. Let's see where the coefficient of the x squared is not 1. And then we see how we solve it. So we have 3x squared minus 15x plus 9 equal to 0. Okay. So here, what we do is that we make sure that the coefficient of the x square is what? The x square is 1. The coefficient of the x square is not 1. So we are going to divide through by what? By 3. So 3 divided by this will give me x square minus 15 divided by 3 will give me 5. And 9 divided by 3 will give me what? Will give me 3 equal to 0. Alright. Then what we do is to take the constant to the other side of the equal sign. So that we can perfect the square of the binomial x squared minus 5x equal to negative 3. Okay, after we have done that, then what we are going to do is to what? Take the coefficient of the x, which is negative 5, then we multiply by 1 over 2. So that we get what? Negative 5 on 2. Then we square. When we square, we will add to both sides of the equation. So that we have x squared minus 5s plus negative 5 on 2 all squared equal to negative 3 plus negative 5 on 2 all squared. Okay, so this is what we have. Then this has become what? We have completed the square here, which will be x minus 5 on 2 all squared to be equal to negative 3 plus negative 5 squared will give me 25. 2 squared will give me 4. Alright, so this is what we have. So let's continue from here. Okay, so what we are going to do is to negative 3 plus 25 divided by 4. That will give me 13 on 4. So we are going to have s minus 5 on 2 all squared to be equal to 13 on 4. 13 on 4. Okay. Then what we do is to what? Get rid of the square. So we are going to square root this side plus or minus 13 on 4. Okay. Then what do? We take the negative 5 on 2 to the other side, so that I have x is to be equal to 5 on 2 positive plus or minus root of 13 on 4. Then x will be equal to 5 on 2. Okay, so here we will have plus or minus square root of 13 will be 13. We will not get a whole number, but square root of 4 will give us 2. Okay, so now what will be our answer? x can be equal to 5 on 2 plus root 13 on 2, or 5 on 2 minus root 13 on 2. So these are the two values of x we are going to have. Either x is 5 on 2 plus root 13 on 2, or x is equal to 5 on 2 minus root 13 on 2. Okay, so we can write our answer also in decimal. So 5 divided by 2 plus root 13 on 2 will give us what? Will give us x to be equal to 4.3028, or 5 on 2 minus root 13, or we have 0.6972. 0.6972. So these are the two values of x we are going to have. Either x is equal to 4.3028 or 0.6972. All right. Okay, so this is the answer to what our question using the completed. So, and take note that anytime your answer gives you what irrational number, okay, you see that the value you have here are irrational because it even involves the root. It means that you cannot use the factorization method to solve. The factorization method, when you put it on the calculator and it gives you a rational number, it means you can use the factorization. And if it gives you irrational, it means you cannot use the factorization. As time goes on, I'll teach how to use what? How to also use the calculator to also solve quadratic equation. All right. So I believe you have enjoyed our lesson. To summarize everything, one, you are using completing the square method. Make sure that the coefficient of the s square is 1. If the coefficient of the s square is 1, then you take the constant to the other side of the equal sign. After you have done that, then take the coefficient of the x, then you multiply by half and square it and add to both sides of the equation, and then you continue to solve and get your answer. I believe you have understood. I will see you another time in our next lesson. In our next lesson, we are going to learn how we use the formula method. See you once again. Bye bye. Find the root of 5s squared minus 2s minus 3 equal to 0. Okay. So the roots are the two values of what? The two values of the x that will satisfy this particular equation. That is the root. So we have 5s squared minus 2s minus 3 to be equal to 0. So what will be my a? 5. My b? Negative 2. And then my c? Negative 3. So my b is negative 2, my c is negative 3. So x is equal to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So what will be my minus b? B is what? Negative 2. So minus 2. So minus is already there, and then the b is negative 2. Plus or minus b squared. So negative 2 square minus 4a 5 times the c negative 3. Okay, all over 2 times the a. What is the a? 5. Okay, so let's continue from here. So my x will now be equal to minus will give me 2 plus or minus negative 2 square will give me 4. Then I come to multiply negative 4 by 5 by negative 3. Okay, so negative 4 times 5 times negative 3, and that will give me 60. So plus 60 all over 10. So my x will be equal to 2 plus or minus square root of 64 6 times 60 plus 4 all over 10, and my x will be equal to 2 plus or minus, what is square root of 64? That is 8 over 10. Okay, so square root of 64 is 8. So my x will be equal to 2, you divide over 10, plus or minus also 8 also over 10. Okay, So this is 2 over 10 and this is over 10. So what will be my x? My x is now equal to 2 over 10 will give me what? 1 over 5. 1 over 5 plus or minus 8 over 10 will give me a 4 also over 5. Alright, so this is what I'm going to have. So either my x is equal to 1 over 5 plus 4 over 5, or my x is going to be 1 over 5 minus 4 on 5. Okay, so what is 1 over 5 plus 4 on 5? Our common denominator is what? Is 5. 1 plus 4 will give me 5. 5 over 5, 1. Or my x common denominator here is 5. 1 minus 4 is going to give me what? Minus 3. Minus 3. So my x can be 1 or my x can be, so the values of x is equal to 1 or minus 3 on 5. So the root of x, okay, that will satisfy this equation is 1 or negative 3 on 5. 1 or negative 3 on 5. Hello, we are still continuing with quadratic equation. Here we are going to learn how we use the graph, okay, to solve quadratic equation method. That is the graphical method. Okay, and what we should know is that when you have a quadratic, okay, you know the standard form of quadratic, a squared plus bs plus c equal to 0. When you have a quadratic and then you are drawing quadratic equation on the graph, okay, that is where we have the Cartesian plane, the y-axis and the s-axis. Okay, what is going to happen is that when you have the quadratic equation on the graph or in the Cartesian plane, then if the coefficient of the s square here, if it is positive, then what is going to happen? That you are going to have a minimum curve. This is how your curve is going to be. So here you are going to have a curve, okay? When you draw quadratic, it will be a curve like this. And you are going to have a minimum curve. Minimum means that the curve will be in this particular shape, okay, like the U shape. Okay, where we may have a minimum value of y and its corresponding s value. Okay, so here this is where the coefficient of s squared is positive. Example like 2s squared minus 6s plus 3, and then can be s squared plus 5s minus 6. Any where the coefficient of the s squared is actually positive, that is what we are talking about. Okay, so this is what we have. And if you want to also look at if the coefficient of the s squared is negative, okay, that one we will have like the end shape like this. Okay, if your curve turn like you have where we will have the maximum value of the y. Okay, if your curve tends to be like that, then here the coefficient of the s squared is negative. It's negative. Where we may have, let's say, 6 minus 3x minus 4s squared equal to 0. You see that the coefficient of the s squared is negative. You can even write it like minus x squared plus 6s minus, let's say, 7. You see, coefficient of the s squared is negative. So anytime the coefficient of the s squared is negative, then we are going to get what? A maximum curve. A maximum curve where we have a maximum value of what? Of the y. And how do we get the roots or the values of the quadratic? That is what we are looking at. We are solving the quadratic equation to get the values of the quadratic. Then what will happen is that you look at where the curve touches what? The s-axis, and the two values there will be the values of what? The values of the x, or the root of the equation. The two values of that will satisfy the equation. So look at where the curve what? Touches or intersects or crosses what? The s-axis, the two values there. So here the root, let's say here is negative a and here is b. Let's say negative a and here is positive b. Then my root is going to what? The root of the equation is going to be, s is equal to minus a or what? Or b, according to the example that I've used there. Alright, so that will become the root of the equation. So let's go and use, let's solve an example and let's see how our curve is going to be. But take note, we need on the x and y axis, we need the values of s and the values of what? And the values of y. So let me give an example and then we'll see how we are going to solve it. So we need a quadratic function and then we'll solve. Okay. So let's look at this particular question. Okay, here it says find the root of s squared plus s minus equal to 0 using the graphical method. Okay, and we are given using the graphical method for intervals of -5 less than or equal to x and less than or equal to 4. So with the graphical method, you have to be given actually the interval, alright, so that we can know the interval to use for our graph. So the interval of the x is from -5 to what? To 4. Okay. Now let's go on and solve our question. But before we can draw the graph, what you should know that we have to know the corresponding y value because we need a point or the coordinate. Okay, so what you will say that let y to be equal to s squared plus s minus 6 for the quadratic function here. So y is equal to s squared plus s minus 6. Okay, and then we are using the interval of -5 less than or equal to s less than 4. Okay, so when you want to get the y values, you will say that we are starting the s from -5. So you say that when s is equal to -5, then you substitute x into the quadratic function. So y will be equal to what? -5 squared plus -5 minus 6, so that we can get the corresponding y value. All right. And then we get our points to do our graph. Okay, so we do substitution. We have -5 squared plus -5, we substitute -5 minus 6, and that will give us 14. So when s is -5, y is 14. Then we continue. When s is what? -4. So we do up to 4. So our y will be equal to what? -4 squared plus -4 minus 6. And let's see what we get for the value of y. So -4 squared plus -4 minus 6, and y will get us 6. And when s is equal to -3, what will be y? Y will be equal to -3 squared plus -3, okay, minus 6. And let's see what we are going to get for y. So -3, -3, okay. So we are going to get y as 0. So when s is negative, y is 0. Then you see that when s is equal to -2, then what will be my y? -2 squared plus -2 minus 6. And then that will be equal to -4. So let's try. And then when x is equal to what? X is equal to, where have you reached? -1. If x is -1, then our y will be equal to -1 squared plus -1 minus 6. And let's see what we get for y. -6. So when x is -1, I will give a -6. And when x is equal to 0, then our y will be equal to a 0 squared plus 0 minus 6. And that will be -6. But this is 0, this will be 0, -6. And when x is equal to 1, y will be equal to what? 1 squared plus 1 minus 6. And 1 squared is 1 plus 1, that is 2. 2 minus 6 will give a -4. And when x is equal to 2, we will have what? Y to be equal to 2 squared plus 2 minus 6. So 2, 0. That will give us 0. X is equal to 3. Okay, when x is equal to 3, we have y to be equal to what? 3 square plus 3 minus 6. 3 square plus 3 minus 6. And that will give us 6. We are not done. We are left with the last one. When x is equal to 4, y will be equal to what? 4 square plus 4 minus 6. So 4 square plus 4 minus 6. That will give us 14. So our y is going to give us 14. Okay. So we have been able to get the values of the s and the values of what? And the values of the y. Alright. We have the x and the y. So let me draw a table so that we can put our x and y on it. And then we'll have a space to draw a graph. So our x value started from where? Minus 5, minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and what? And 4. So that is where our x value started from. Alright, then our y values. When x is negative 5, y was 14. When x is negative 4, what did we get for y? 6. When x is negative 3, had y as 0. X is negative 2, y gave us negative 4. X is negative 1, y gave us negative 6. X is 0, y gave us what? Negative 6. X is 1, y gave us negative 4. X is 2, y gave us 0. X is 3, y gave us 6. And x is 4, y gave us 14. Okay, so this is what we have for the values of s and y so that we can plot it on the graph. So this is what we have in our table. Okay, as time goes on, I will also teach how to use the calculator for the table without going through all these steps. You can also use the calculator and then you get your table. So this is what we have. So we are going to pick, we were not given a scale, so we are going to pick our convenience scale, okay, so that we can draw the graph. So if we pick our convenience scale, what scale will be convenient for us? Let me see. On the x side, starting from negative 5 to positive 4. So on the x side, you can pick 2 centimeters to 1 unit, alright? And then on the y axis to 14, you can pick 2 centimeters to what? To 2 units, and that I believe will help us. So since the y has positive, the highest positive value is 14, and the least negative value is negative 6. So let me bring the curve down here like this so that it can go there. So we are going to use 2 centimeters to 2 units on the y axis. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. That is what we have on our y axis here. Okay, then we have here negative 2, negative 4, okay, negative 6. That's alright. And then on the x axis too, let me use 2 centimeters to 1 unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's say 5. And then negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. Okay, so we have all our values in the y and the x axis. Okay, so what we are going to do is to plot the points and then we get a curve. So negative 5 is 14. So negative 5 on the x axis, 14 on the y axis. So that will be here. So as you can also use the graph so that we get the accuracy of the curve. All right. Okay. So this is just a freehand sketch. Okay, not drawn actually to scale. Negative 4 give me 6. So negative 4 and 6 will be here. negative 3, 0. So that will be here. Negative 2, negative 4, negative 2, negative 4 will be here. We have negative 1, negative 6. So negative 1, negative 6 will come here. We have 0, negative 6. So that will be on the negative 6 here. And we have 1, negative 4. 1, negative 4. So 1, negative 4 will also be here. We have 2, 0 will be here. We have 3, 6. 3, positive 6 will be here. And then 4, 14. 4, positive 14. So 4, positive 14 will also be here. After that, we join the points. So we are going to join. So see how we join the points. Alright, so this is what we have. Okay, we have joined the points. We have joined the points. So we have, this is our curve so nicely. Y is equal to x squared plus x minus 6. And this is a quadratic function for the curve. Y is equal to x squared plus x minus 6. Okay. So this is our curve, and this is what we have. So we are finding the root of x squared plus x minus equal to 0. And you say, how do you find the root? The root of the equation are the two values of s that satisfy the equation. And we say that to get the root, you look at the curve, where the curve touches the s axis. Let's see where the curve touches the s. The curve touches the s axis at where s is equal to negative 3. And then where s is equal to what? 2. So s is negative, s is 2. So the root of the equation, therefore we can conclude that the root of the equation x squared plus x minus 6 equal to 0 are negative 3 and positive 2. Negative 3 and positive 2. It means that negative 3 and positive 2, when you substitute into the equation, okay, when you substitute into the equation, that is what will satisfy the quadratic equation. So when you solve this quadratic equation, this is what we are going to get. We are going to get negative 3 and then positive 2. Okay. So instead of using the factorization or the completing the score of the formula, you can also use the curve, the graph, drawing the curve, and then you get your answer. Okay, so it will satisfy the curve at where the values of that will satisfy the curve minus 3 and positive 2. That is where the curve touches what? Touches the s axis. Touches the s axis. I believe you get it. Alright. We are going to solve one more example on this, and I know you understand. We are going to solve a question where the curve is maximum. Alright. Okay, so let's also look at example where the coefficient of the s squared is what? Is negative. And see, we are finding the root of this using the graphical method for intervals negative 2, less than equal to s, less than equal to 5. Okay, so first of all, what do we say? We say that let y to be equal to what? 4 plus 3s minus s squared. Okay, so here the coefficient of the s squared is negative. So we are going to get a maximum curve. And what is the interval of the x? So let's start from negative 2 to 5. So we say that when s is negative 2, then what to be our y? Y is 4 plus 3 times negative 2 minus negative 2 squared. So you see how I've written it. 4 plus 3 times negative minus, then the s is negative 2, so negative 2 squared. So 4 plus 3 times negative 2 minus negative 2 squared, and that will give us negative 6. Okay, let me see. When s is negative 1, so y will be equal to 4 plus 3 times negative 1 minus negative 1 squared. So we put negative 1 there, and we see what we get. We get y to be 0. Alright, and when s is 0, then y will be equal to what? 4 plus 3 times 0 minus 0 squared. And so 4 plus 3 by 0 minus 0 squared will give us 4. Okay, and when s is equal to 1, then what we call 4 plus 3 times 1 minus 1 squared. Okay, so 4 plus 3 times 1 minus 1 squared, 4 plus will give us 6. Okay, so when s is equal to 2, then y will be equal to 4 plus 3 times 2 minus 2 squared. Okay, so when s is 2, we get our y to be 6. Okay. When x is equal to 3, then our y will be equal to what? That is 4 plus 3 times 3 minus 3 squared. 4 plus 3 times 3 minus 3 squared, and that will give us 4. And when s is equal to 4, y will be equal to 4 plus 3 times 4 minus 4 squared. And that will give us 0. And when s is equal to 5, then y will be equal to what? 4 plus 3 times 5 minus 5 squared. And that will give us negative 6. Okay, so we are done with the values, and now we can go straight and draw. So let me put it in the table form like this, so that when we are drawing our graph it will be easier. So my x and then my y. So the s start from negative 2 ending at what? Ending at 5. Okay, so when s is negative 2, what is y? Negative 6. When s is negative 1, what is y? 0. When s is 0, then y will give me 4. When s is 1, y is giving me 6. When s is 2, y is giving me 6. When s is 3, y is giving me 4. When s is 4, y is giving me 0. And when s is 4, y is giving me negative 6. Okay, so this is what we have. Okay, then what we are going to do is to draw our graph. So let's see. Most of the time in the question you'll be given a scale, but if you are not given, let's see, on the y-axis, let me see the values. Let's use 2 centimeter to 2 units on the y, and then 2 centimeter to 1 on the x. Okay, so you draw your Cartesian plane lines that are on the highest value of the y is 6 and the least value is negative 6. Okay, so 0 is here. So on the y, on the x, it starts from 1 to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Negative 1, negative 2. Okay, so let's say negative 3. Part of on the, so this is my x, on the y-axis, that is 2, let me use 2, 4, and 6. That is okay. And then negative 2, negative 4, negative 6. That is fine. Okay, so this is my y-axis. And let's see what we are going to get. So negative 2 on the x will give me negative 6. So negative 2, negative 6, so that will be here. Then negative 1, 0, so that will be here. 0, 4 will be here. 1, 6, 1, 6, that will give me here. 2, 6, that will also give me here. 3, 4, 3, 4, I have to come here. And then 4, 0 will be here. And then 5, negative 6, that will also be here. Okay, so when you join the curve to go like this, wow. So you see what we have here. When the coefficient of the x square is negative, we are going to have our curve in this way, a maximum curve. All right. So now let's look at the root. Okay, so this our curve is y is equal to 4 plus 3x minus x squared. Okay, so now let's see the root of the equation, or the root of the quadratic equation. So the root is where the curve touches the x-axis. So the curve is touching the x-axis, where x is what? Negative 1, and then s is what? Is 4. So you come and conclude that, therefore, the root of the equation 4 plus 3x minus s squared are negative 1 and 4. So when you solve 4 plus 3x minus s squared equal to 0, these are the values you are going to get. You are going to get s as negative 1 and then s as what? As 4. And these two values will satisfy the equation. Alright. So this is what we have. I believe and I know you have found it. So you can pick your graph and then you go through this one. But I'll get time. You go through quadratic function. Okay. Looking at all the possible questions that they can ask you on it. So this is about the graphical method, and I hope and I believe you have understood. Okay, so I'll see you for more. Bye bye.